Welcome to Philosophy15. I'm Scott Aikin.
And I'm Robert Talisse.
We're the authors of Why We Argue and How We Should, A Guide to Political Disagreement. These are 15-minute discussions about philosophy with two philosophy professors. Today, Rob's got a problem case, or a puzzle case, from Mills on Liberty.
So yeah, one of the things that gets discussed a lot in the literature surrounding conceptions of political liberty is this puzzling move at the close of Mills on Liberty. I'm going to read the case. It's sometimes just referred to as the Bad Bridge case. Mill writes, "If either a public officer or anyone else saw a person attempting to cross a bridge which had been ascertained to be unsafe, and there were no time to warn him of his danger, they," that is the public officer or anyone else, "might seize him and turn him back without any real infringement of his liberty. For liberty consists in doing what one desires, and he does not desire to fall into the river." Now, let me just say quickly what's puzzling about this, and then maybe we can start thinking about ways to conceive or work on the puzzle. It looks like an unhappy mixture of what we might think of as sort of the negative liberty view, which identifies freedom with either the absence of interference or with the social condition under which someone is protected from interference. Notice that the one very simple principle, the harm principle that you get in Mills on Liberty, looks like it understands liberty in the latter sense. That is, that freedom is non-interference, and so the way in which a society is free is that it incorporates into its institutions some explicit statement of the limits to social and political coercion. That's what the harm principle does. So a lot of On Liberty looks like it's devoted to spelling out this kind of negative conception of freedom. It's the stable absence of something. It looks, however, like the Bad Bridge case rubs up against or starts being tempted by what looks like a classic positive liberty conception, where on the positive liberty view, one is free insofar as one is governed by one's true desires, one's autonomous desires, one's properly informed preferences. And so what Mill is suggesting then is that the man is about to walk on the bridge, and let's just go with the case and say there's no time to warn him. The only way you have available to you of preventing him from walking onto the bridge is by, as he says, seizing him and turning him back. So it's not even just like putting your hand in his way. It's like you grab him and you sort of, you push him a little, you push him in the opposite direction. He says that you can do that. You can put your hands, Mill says you can put your hands on another person and push him in a different direction from the one he's walking without any real infringement on his liberty. Because by seizing him and pushing him, you are enabling him to do what he really wants.
So here's my first reaction to this. Now, so the puzzling case is, again, that by not letting him do what he thinks he wants to do, but you're not infringing on his liberty at all. So one thought that I had immediately when hearing when thinking about this was, well, isn't this just a case of, you might say, good paternalism? Where you say, look, I'm helping you, I'm making sure that you're doing what you actually want to do. You think that you want to do this, but you don't do that. So why can't this just be a case of benign paternalism?
Well, because paternalism is always understood as a case of justified limiting of another person's freedom.
Got it. Right.
Right? So when we defend paternalism, we're not denying that freedom is being infringed. We're saying it is being infringed, but the person's real interests are salient or significant enough that we're justified in limiting his freedom.
So the action by the paternalist view is going to be the same, but the theoretical take on it is different. The paternalist says, yeah, you get to turn them around, but that's a justified infringement on their freedom.
That's right.
The Mill here says no infringement at all. So this is not a case of
infringement at all.
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Okay.
And that looks like a straightforward... So
that sounds like positive
the
liberty.
positive liberty view is very comfortable with the thought that there are cases where one can apply force as a means of liberation.
Right.
Where the means there are constitutive. It's by the application of force, you are free.
Making you
it's
free.
not that I'm applying force so that after the force has been applied, you can more securely enjoy your freedom or more securely exercise your freedom. It's the force itself is adding to your freedom on the positive liberty view, on at least standard analyses of these things. So it's a puzzle. And I wonder if the following isn't one way to start thinking about how this could be made less puzzling, a thing for a negative liberty theorist to say. Couldn't a negative liberty theorist make a distinction between seizing you and turning you back on the basis of reasons that you, Scott, as you stand here, right now, can appreciate the force of? And so that's one.
That's one.
The sort of, I'm coercing you. I'm not infringing on your freedom because the application of the force is driven by a set of reasons that, were they simply to be announced to you, you instantly would recognize the force of and would stop yourself. That you would do the same thing if the reasons were announced to you.
Yes.
Contrast that with the case where we say, well, I'm coercing you on the basis of reasons that you can endorse right here, right now,
Right.
but can only endorse after
Which on the other
some,
side. Yeah.
right, some development of your capacities, or some removal of your false consciousness, or some raising of your conception of yourself so that you more fully identify with your rational self-interest rather than your merely perceived self-interest. That is, that maybe there's still some distance between the Millian view, if we consider it as an appeal to the accessibility of the coerced person to the force of the reasons driving the coercion. Maybe there's some distance between that kind of view and the full-bore positive liberty view, which I take it, in its standard models, does not require that the force that is freeing you is explicable in terms that you right now are ready to endorse. In fact, on most versions of the positive liberty view, what's objectionable about the positive liberty view is that the less accessible the reasons for the coercion are to you, the more
necessary.
the more liberated you are when I force you.
Right. So whenever I prevent my kids from getting into the cookie jar,
Right.
part of this is to say that they want the cookies now, and I can't say, you just really don't want the cookies. It's to say, look, it's for your own good that you don't get the cookies. Now, in this regard, this distinction, we would say, look, there's a difference between me preventing my kids getting in the cookie jar and the agent of the state preventing people from walking over the bridge. There would be a difference there because in the case of the bridge, the line is, you don't want to fall in the river.
Right.
But we can. But am I right that so with some of these positive liberty views, they could say, but there's a weaker sense in which they say, but you do want to become better. So if I say something like, look, I prevent my kids from getting in the cookie jar, and maybe this is a little bit different, but you'd say, but you don't want to ruin your dinner.
Right. So appealing to some enlightened self-interest.
That's right.
Might be a way of justifying the lessening of your freedom.
Right.
It's not a way.
Okay, got it. So it's again. So again, the strategy was to go paternalistic again with this. Okay, got it.
So this is saying the stronger thing. There's no infringement of his liberty.
Right.
Not that there's a good justification for infringing on his liberty. Now, to Mill's credit, there's nothing here that suggests, and there's a lot that would suggest otherwise, that Mill isn't willing to say, it doesn't seem to me, that you grab the guy, you turn him around, you say, hey, the bridge is bad. If you take a step on it, you're going to fall into the river. If the guy then says, yeah, I know, but I like risk.
Right.
I don't think Mill isn't ready to say then you get to stop him again.
Right.
Mill says that I think you have to let him go on his way at that point.
Sure.
On the Millian view. So that's another way in which it's not a full bore positive liberty view.
So how different would this? So this case is one. Then how different is the agent of the state from then something that just prevents people from crossing the bridge? Because
like a fence?
That's the question now, is what's the difference here? Is it the putting your hands on the person that's the infringement of the liberty? Is it the preventing them without giving them a reason? Because a fence could do the exact same thing. I don't have to give you a reason. There's just a fence there, right? And I just don't have time to give them the reasons, or I string up some tape or something like that. Where is the infringement of their freedom? Is it in just preventing them from doing what they want, or is it that the hands-on?
So that's a good question. So surely a negative liberty theorist ought to think that any seizing of another person is a lessening of that person's liberty.
Fences don't do that, though.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, maybe they do. Look, maybe they do, maybe they don't.
Different way.
We're just talking about sort of like, this is sufficient this looks like it's a sufficient condition for lessening your liberty. I grab you.
Yeah, that looks...
The negative liberty theorist is then interested in the distinction between justified freedom lessening grabbings and unjustified freedom lessening grabbings. But the grabbings are always freedom lessening.
Yes.
Here we've got a negative liberty theorist who's saying, no, there's a kind of seizing, a kind of grabbing that's not freedom lessening. And that's the puzzle.
That's right. So that's the reason why I was going for the fence, where it's like maybe there are just some kind of grabbings that are more like fences.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
But you need an account.
Right.
Right? So I think what Mill has, I think the most charitable way is to say, what Mill has in mind is the idea that you grab somebody on the basis of reasons that as soon as they hear the reason, they will do what you are making them do.
Right.
That's not a lessening of their freedom, because you're appealing to, when you are grabbing them on the basis of reasons that apply to them even though they're not manifest to them. So, apply to them in a way that's endorsable by them at the moment you grab them.
At the moment they're doing it. So, but again, maybe the proximity of how accessible they are seems to make a difference, because that again starts sounding a lot more like the paternalism argument that I gave. Was like, look, you have enlightened self-interest. We're going to prevent you from doing something that you think you want to do, but you don't really want to do that.
Right.
And so we actually are improving your liberty, and we're preserving your liberty and preventing you from doing something that you only think that you want to do. So it looks like maybe the way that you'd be able to make the distinction is you'd say, there's got to be some, no garden path of questions that you'd have to drag them down to be able to get to it. It's like, do you want to fall in the river? No. Well, that would be a consequence of you crossing the bridge. Is that the...
That's right. So certainly the garden path thought is got to be part of the story. But I wonder if there's also not another part of the story that says that because the bridge is not a means to the guy's end... Right? So in the cookie case, you're not saying to your kids, you don't want the cookies. You're saying, you want the cookies, but you have this other thing that you want that overrides.
Right.
Right? In this case, the thing is, you want to cross the river, and this won't get you across.
Right. So the river, maybe crossing the river is just a means to another end. Okay, got it.
Thanks, folks. See you next time.